Ms. Chilton? Here. Dr. Estrop?
Here.
Mr. O'Neill?
Here.
Mr. Rue?
Here.
Mr. Copeland?
Here. Mr. Manager.
Yes, Commission, thank you. And we have 2 work session items for you tonight. The first presentation will be in regard to electric scooters, or e-scooters as they're called. As you will recall, we had a first reading item for legislation at our last meeting. And there were enough questions that I thought it was important we do a work session this second meeting as you consider this item. So Logan Cobbs and Jason Irick from our staff will present on that. And then following that, we will have the Solid Waste District Annual Report, and Chuck Bauer and Bonnie Martins is here tonight to provide us that presentation as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jason and Logan to present on electric scooter.
Thank you, guys. So when we thought about presenting the scooters, we kind of wanted to go from a top-bottom approach to kind of get everything out of the way, get all the questions answered, so everybody's back coming or what might. So I guess to start it off, so e-scooters are defined as shared scooter. Companies and preferred. The idea of the modern shared electric started in 17.
Is your microphone on?
Yeah, a little better. Yeah. The idea started in 2017 with Bird Scooters, who just spontaneously launched in San Francisco, and that got a little hectic. So what does shared electric scooter mean? It means exactly that. Not owned by the end, or not the individual that rents the scooter's actual scooter. They just hop on it and can use it. They're owned by the company. How much do they cost is generally the same throughout the company. So Lime and Bird, for example, are the 2 largest scooter companies. They charge a $1 fee when you rent it, and it's 15 cents per minute following that $1. So, for example, a 10-minute trip on an e-scooter would cost you $2.50. Some other cities that they operate in Ohio include Dayton, Cincinnati, Columbus, all of the ring suburbs, Cleveland, all their ring suburbs, Athens, Akron, Toledo, etc.
So how are they rented? How would someone go about using an electric scooter? So they are rented through the e-scooter company. So the patron would be using their iPhone. They would download the app. They would then enter their credit card information, and then they would be charged for the ride that they took. So how are these electric scooters actually charged? Not in terms of money, but in terms of how are they going to continue being used? So this will provide something like a side hustle to some of our Springfield residents. So there is a process where folks in the community could sign up to charge these electric scooters, and they would be getting paid by the actual scooter company. So you would sign up in the same app that you would use to ride the scooters, and you would put in an application. It's a fairly simple application, and then you would either be approved or denied. But assuming you're approved, you would then be sent cords to essentially charge these scooters, and then you would return them to the designated areas. So you're sent between 3 to 4 cords, and you could charge these anywhere at home, in your office, and then return them. And then who maintains them? So the actual scooter company does maintain these, and those are their assets.
So what does an e-scooter look like? Pretty standard. Handlebars, front back wheel, bell, brake system, kickstand. This is what most of the shared electric scooter companies' scooters will look like, the ones that we've seen in the city. So, what is not an e-scooter? None of these are e-scooters.
My mobile. Mobility card's not a scooter, okay.
None of these would
Best part of the
qualify as
presentation.
e-scooters under our ordinance, because under our ordinance, scooters are pretty well defined in those proposed what they
Don't we already have something like this? So I know a lot of surrounding communities have a lot of bike share programs. If you're familiar with the Dayton area, they have the green bikes. Those are link bike share systems. And I know Columbus has Kogo. But we don't have anything of this sort. And I know Commissioner O'Neill asked 2 weeks ago about a program at Wittenberg. So in essence, that program began in 2012. Our partners at TCC did get a grant, and they gifted Wittenberg with 9 bicycles, and their students can rent those and ride them around campus. So this is certainly different than what we're proposing tonight, mainly because those bicycles at WIT, it's called the Tiger Share program, but those are not motorized. There are no fees associated with that, and they're privately owned by Wittenberg. So
Morgan, is that still in existence today?
it is. I called Lewis and asked if they still use those. He said they're certainly past their useful life, but he believes that there's still bicycles there at WIT for rent. So, benefit of the e-scooter. So they're more environmentally friendly. There are no fumes associated with the e-scooters, as we've talked about, the charging feature. And then they don't use fuel, so faster commuting from one destination to the others, especially throughout our downtown. Low operational cost. I know Jason spoke of the cost structure earlier, but fairly low cost to rent these scooters. Quiet operation, certainly much quieter than a car or a motorcycle, and then it reduces parking problems with vehicles. So certainly we don't have any parking issues here, especially with our new parking garage, but this will still mitigate the use of parking here in our downtown.
So some of the difficulties that are traditionally associated with scooter programs include having a large amount of companies and a large amount of scooters. This worries cities generally with parking of these scooters kind of scattered around the city. Charging times, people are always concerned of, well, if I get on a scooter, is it going to be charged? Is it just going to sit there and have a battery abandoned by the street? Of course, the risks of driving these on roadways and their limited range. So why are we better positioned to deal with those difficulties is 2021. These companies have been around. Cities have been dealing with these for years. And the benefit we have now is time. You were able to see what difficulties cities face and kind of build our proposed ordinances and use agreement to try to mitigate some of the. So the flood of e-scooters kind of taking over downtown, we addressed that specifically in our use. So a use agreement we've kind of introduced as a light. So in order for an e-scooter company to operate in the city, they must first enter into a use agreement. That use agreement will have a variety of things in it, a living document. So as we see difficulties down the line when we enter into companies, specifically address parking concerns. We have in our proposed ordinance a very large section on parking. These parking restrictions were drafted after reviewing difficulties that neighboring cities have had regarding e-scooters being parked. For instance, you block handicap, can't block an egress sidewalk. There's specific areas that they're required to park. As far as charging time, the provider issue, the providers have addressed. So they have, Bird has peoples called chirpers. Lime uses juicer. These are specific individuals, as Logan spoke about. They go around computers, charge them, and get paid to charge them. And then they deploy them at specific areas that are outlined in our use agreement for deployment. We're not going to go charge them and drop them off on a side. Do that. Roadway and one of the other. So cities having scooters operate on roadways with IP. We address that in our ordinances or proposed ordinances, specifically in operation restriction. And that if you are riding these on a street, you have to ride further to the right of the street at the top. You're not permitted to operate roadways that have a speed limit above 30. That is traditionally shown in cities to be a much more and then the limited range. So I know there were discussions where these batteries, they've advanced pretty significantly in 2017, a short period of time, that allows these devices to go really far. And one of the concerns was, well, what if somebody hops on one here and drives up North Bechtel? That is what our use agreement came into play. So we put in our use agreement that these companies have to have a defined operation area. Now, these defined operation areas geocache these devices. So they can't operate outside of the areas that we agree they can operate.
They stop work.
Yeah. So our ordinance was a learned approach. So we went through each of the ordinance sections, specifically looked at what other cities did out it and difficulties faced drafting that legislation. For instance, the city of Columbus had these come in 2018. They didn't do anything for a year so they could observe how the scooters operate in the city, and then they drafted ordinance. So they were a very valuable ordinance to have because we've been able to kind of dissect issues that they all face. So we apply the code. We have provider procedures. So we require these providers to enter the use agreement and agree to have specific insurance limits and indemnify the city and the city harmless. So that gives us another layer of protection on top of these orders. So the required equipment was specifically to address the scooter. We wanted to make sure the scooters were actually safe. They had kickstands, people run them over the street. So that section of the ordinance specifically addresses what each of these scooters have to have to operate, like back, front, brake, operation restrictions was specifically addressed. Well, operation restrictions and operation on bicycle pedestrian way. We have a lot of bike. This might be something that we're able to in the future look at and integrate into our bike path. We businesses, properties to actually give people another avenue to get to places instead of parking. I always think of the Yellow Brewery off a bike. These also were pretty aimed at safety. We wanted to make sure people were 18 when they operate. That being over 18, they have the ability to choose whether or not they're going to wear a helmet, which was why we didn't make it 16 and up. The ability to ride these on the roadway, but also require that individuals riding on the roadway recognize that these are vehicles and not can drive. You have to watch what your speed limit is on these streets. And we have a few catch-all clauses in there that just say you can't operate these wrecks. There's specific clauses that prohibit you from zigzagging on the street. You have to keep your hands on the. They're just things that we've recognized in other cities that we know these cities have had difficulties with or regulate that we want to get in front of. We want to make sure we have stuff. The penalties that or parking requirements first. Our parking requirement section is pretty large. It makes sure that these are where we want them to be in the city. They're not cluttering the street, they're cluttering the sidewalk. These are specifically parked in areas that we've defined or specifically prohibited from parking. So we wanted to jump ahead of it. That's why that section is the largest. The penalties that we put in, I had a conversation with our prosecutor's office regarding what type of penalty do we want to include. because there obviously has to be some deterrent getting drunk and drive the street. The penalty we put in for just a general violation of these ordinances is a minor mistake. It's similar to if you're operating a vehicle and you park in a handicap spot and you don't have a that's the same penalty that you'll receive for doing a ramp, street, and he's will happen. But and transitioning from our ordinances, a lot of city requires providers to enter into license. We kind of twisted that license to be a use agreement. So the use agreement is the contract we'll enter into with the provider that details a lot of information. That information will be anything from the zone of operation, where we specifically detail where they operate within the city, to having customer service open 24 hours, to answering our calls when we say, hey, this scooter is sitting here for 3 days and it's dead. That is stuff that they must read prior to them being permitted to operate in our right of way. The other kind of out there thing that we've included in the use agreement is a data sheet. Now, these providers are able to provide us data of usage of scooter. So this will help on the zone of operation. We can get enough user, it's not going to be specific. It's just going to be where these scooters are used more frequently. That will allow us to better draw these maps so people can benefit from use of scooters in the city. So conclusion is we've had known challenges that have been around for years. The aspect that we faced was taking these challenges, drafting it into an ordinance and a use agreement that specifically mitigate any of those issues that cities face pretty routine. We did that through a use agreement, and our ordinances kind of gave us control over how these are operated, parked here, who can operate, and how and address any other problems that we have in the future that we don't see now that we might. So that was the hope with the use agreement, is that, hey, this is a living document. We've had issues. Here's how we.
Yeah, how many is the person that wants to bring him to town? How many would there be on the street if everything went forward as planned? Any number?
I believe we were going to start with 50.
Oh, wow.
So I don't have a question, but I do have a comment. I think we all might be riding scooters if gas prices continue to go up.
Okay.
I mean, really. But with the helmets, you have to have your own helmet. Is that the correct way this goes?
Yeah, so we drafted these specifically so if you're 18 and older, if you're under 18, it would be against our ordinance to operate these. And if you're over 18, you can operate them without a helmet. So yeah, you would have to have your own helmet.
But you don't have to have it to operate it.
Correct.
Thank you.
Does this provide for night operations, or is that specified in the use?
We did not address the time of day. Operate. They are required to have permitted reflectors. Generally, the same rules apply by.
And I wasn't clear in terms of what you said about, can they use the bike path? Can they not?
Yeah, they have to yield to other pedestrians. Right.
But sidewalks are out of bounds.
They're not permitted on.
So they use the street, bike, but not.
Correct.
Oh, Dave, maybe right
These,
next door.
if this scooter is involved in some sort of an accident and proof of insurance is required, as police officers traditionally ask, are the customers that are using these vehicles going to have insurance?
We do not require the individuals that use these to have insurance. We don't address that anywhere because they're not specifically motor vehicles on the road.
Like a bicycle?
So it would be similar to a bicycle
You
accident.
done an act?
It's got a motor on it, right?
Electric.
Battery.
But if it's involved in an accident, that concerns me. Who's going to be responsible? Like if it rams into a car and doesn't understand how to stop.
Yeah.
And it's at fault.
The person riding it
scooter's
or the,
is at fault, or the operator is at fault. Is the operator not responsible?
so the operator would be responsible for that instance, but that would be the same as a person pushing their bike down the street and just car. It wouldn't be the same as them driving a car. And if the scooter malfunctions, there's specific reasons that we've included that they have to have operate to provide.
But the operator doesn't have to. The purveyor has to have the
Correct.
insurance.
Mhm.
And the city has no liability in this whatsoever.
Correct. No
Zero.
liability at all. Correct.
Do you agree with that, Law Director?
City can always be a party to a case. It doesn't stop anybody filing something. Our protection and putting ourselves in the position.
Thank you for making that clear, because I was like, okay, you know, when you first started talking about scooters, I thought about those that you sit down on and
Yeah.
ride. That's what I
Motor.
thought about. And then I thought, okay, these scooters can be dropped off everywhere, but you've got specific areas that they can be operated in.
And these are allowed to operate at night without a light. Bicycles traditionally have lights on them that run at night. But these do not have to have
These do.
a light. Please?
He's saying they do. These do.
Who's saying that?
The guy that runs them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Has a headlight.
It has side lights as well.
All right, we need you to go to the microphone if you're going to talk and give us your name and address for the record.
Are you all right? Thanks. I got the answer.
My name's Nathan Smith. I operate in several cities around Ohio for Bird as a franchise. So currently Mount Vernon, Circleville, Columbus, Tiffin.
Thank
So
you.
while he's there, I have a question. So you're in smaller cities or similar sized cities. How is this,
So I
like
would say
Tiffin? I mean,
there's
that's
a
a smaller.
3-week learning curve, right? So as there becomes this turn as like scooter riders are afraid of drivers. And then, so they tend to be hesitant. And then drivers don't know they're there yet. After 3 weeks, it just becomes a city feature. It just works out. So I operate 1,000 scooters in Columbus. I had one automobile.
Fun.
And that includes like High Street along Ohio. Like
Mhm.
people eventually just know that.
I would be a little more comfortable if we had either in the user agreement or in the ordinance, specific references to lighting in the evening, as this gentleman has spoke. I'm very uncomfortable and uneasy about having no lights beyond reflectors on these motorized scooters.
Sure, and I apologize. I had misspoken. Our ordinances require that these have a reflector light in the back and a lamp pointing forward.
There you go.
So they are required to have.
On the current model, there's 8 lights
I want them
from a mile away.
I would prefer they be well lit,
Sounds like
more
they are.
than a reflector.
Yeah, the reflector light in the back and a lamp pointing.
That's fine.
So am I hearing also there are going to be job opportunities for people to charge these up?
Correct.
Thank you.
Term of the agreement that we would be entering into, what is our escape clause in it?
We have a clause.
Because apparently this gentleman will have an investment here. And
We can address any issues that come up through these agreements with a kind of a traditional approach on contract dispute, where if an individual does not fulfill a portion of the contract they agree to, then we can notify them that you're in breach of the contract, and generally 30 days cure. If they don't cure it, then we can terminate the contract. If that contract is terminated, this is a use agreement that's required to operate in the city right of way, then they would be required to move their items from the right of way.
so there's not a clause in there that either party can dissolve the contract at any time?
No, no.
So if we don't like this, just because we just don't like it, can we get out of it?
We can revisit these by changing our ordinances that permit them to occur in our city.
Anything else from commissioners?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Logan.
Thanks. Next, commissioners, we do have a work session presenting the Solid Waste District Annual Report. I'll ask Chuck, Bonnie, if they would like to come up to the table, and Logan's going to switch over to their presentation.
Like in page 2. That's good water we waste. Okay. Should I go ahead and start?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So my name's Chuck Bauer, and I'm the director of the Solid Waste District. Bonnie Martins is with me as well. And thank you for the time to present our 2020 annual report for the Solid Waste District. Wanted to go over a quick outline for what we want to talk about. I know we come here every year. I think last year was by Zoom, so it's nice to see everyone in person this year. We'll give a quick background of the Solid Waste District, kind of what we're about. We'll talk about some contracts that the Solid Waste District has. We have a contract for environmental enforcement with the Sheriff's Office and with the Health District. I will talk about some of the programs that we have, the specialty recycling, recycling drop-off stations that we operate within the county, education work that we do, community engagement, and then at the end, I'll kind of talk about specific kind of numbers related to the metrics from last year in the Solid Waste District. There we go. So our mission from the Solid Waste District, we are a county agency, and what we're tasked with is to make sure that county residents and businesses have access to comprehensive solid waste services. We also provide a lot of environmental education and assistance and support to the community, and with waste reduction and programs and those types of services. So we do have a staff to help with us with this. Have full-time staff that includes Bonnie Martin. She's our program manager. We have a program specialist, Sam Perrin, who does a lot of education work. And we have a recycling facility manager who's John Hoy. So those are our 3-time full staff folks. I'm part-time as a director. And then we also have a couple operations workers that help at the facility. Sean Ogletree and Mick Mitch right now are working as intermittent folks to help out. And I mentioned before, we have a couple contracts, one with the Sheriff's Office and the Combined Health District help with our program. Those folks, the little guys that don't actually work at the Solid Waste District, they just were showing up there. So that was a group that Sam showed around the site. So the Health District does a lot of inspection and licensing and enforcement work related to solid waste in the community. So they do license and inspect trash trucks. So you can see the kind of numbers that went along for 2020. So they looked at 168 trash truck vehicles last year. They inspect composting facilities. We had 10 of those inspected within the county. They work at to license salvage yards and inspect salvage yards, C&D landfills, scrap tire dealers. There was 28 that they inspected last year. They also take complaints from the community related to solid waste problems. So you can see the number of calls they got. They do inspection work. They issue warning letters, and then when appropriate, they'll issue board orders to have folks clean up the site. And please, if you have questions along the way, please interrupt and I'll. So I mentioned that we have an enforcement contract with with the sheriff's office, and this is deputies Bennett and Tillman. They've actually worked for at least the last 5 or 6 years with the solid waste district. The solid waste district it takes complaint calls for illegally dumped materials. So in 2020, we had 314 calls that come in. And those calls get written up by our staff in the office, and they go to the deputies to investigate. And if the materials are in the public right of way, they'll take our pride crew, which I'll talk about next, the inmates to help clean up those illegally dumped materials. They'll do investigations, and when they find information that will lead to an arrest, then they'll try to prosecute for illegal dump. The sheriff's office also allows for use of the PRIDE program, which is a program that allows inmates that are in the sheriff's custody to come out of the jail and provide services to the community. So you can see last year the inmates picked up over 100 tons of trash, and they walk township roads and do cleanups, and they also provide hours of service at our solid waste districts through baling cardboard and providing services during our specialty recycling. So we're fortunate to have that contract and that labor force, and that's through the contract we have with the sheriff's office. So I mentioned specialty recycling. Specialty recycling, we operate every Thursday. You can see the hours 9 to 6 p.m. And the first Saturday of each month, 9 to noon. We had some time last year with the COVID that we were closed, but we were able to actually operate more than not, and we were open most of the year. So we collected 57 tons of TVs and electronics last year. 25 tons of paint came through that program, and over 7 tons of household hazardous waste. We had over 2,600 customers come through last year. So that's pretty close to what we did in 2019, actually. I'll let Bonnie kind of talk here about the education program.
So Sam Perrin is our education specialist, and prior to some of the shutdowns from March on in the schools, he actually was able to do a few in-person classroom programs. Once some of the shutdowns happened and he couldn't get into the schools, we started putting both videos on our Keep Pot County Beautiful page about the sunflower program and how to correctly recycle at some of our drop-off locations. He also found a way to create kind of a contest where people could like and share our page, which got more interest into the solid waste and Keep Pot County Beautiful page with a mask giveaway, as well as when it really became evident that schools were not going to return to in-person programs, he created some YouTube videos of the age level programs, certain age level programs that he had that made sense to do it in that format. And then the teachers could get online with their students and watch that YouTube video, etc. So in the community, as I said, some of our programs weren't able to happen because of COVID. One of which was our Great American Cleanup program. And the alternative that we came up with in the top photo is what is a little basically housing unit for the trash bags, gloves, safety vests, safety flyers that not only covered what you should and shouldn't pick up, say as part of a litter pickup, if that's what you're doing, but also COVID restrictions last year. And the residents could go to one of the two locations. These boxes were put at two of our drop-off locations, and then at one point were switched to two different drop-off locations. We did have one in-person fall planting day in the fall. Of course, with that litter box, we had over 3,000 bags, grabbers, and gloves, and we were able to plant and have photos taken in the sunflower field between West Grand and West Euclid.
Okay. So Bonnie already kind of mentioned this is a video of a picture of the mask giveaway that Sam kind of thought up, and we were trying to stay engaged last year. It was much more difficult, as everyone knows. There weren't really no in-person education opportunities, but we still last year were able to try to do some virtual programs. We also the sunflower field actually won the national award from Keep America Beautiful, that project itself. And you can see that's Mike Cooper, the county's public information officer, who went to, I think it's Minneapolis, but I may be wrong. It was the national convention kind of early last year to accept the award for Keep Cook County Beautiful. So we're really proud to partner with that organization with that project. And it's part of the idea behind that piece is that area or that project in Euclid and West and Grand is that we wanted to do a project that would improve the neighborhood and it's right along the bike path, and then also try to prevent litter from happening in that area, and it's very successful. It's been a good project for us to partner with that group. I mentioned I was going to start talking about kind of some numbers, so less pictures here. I'm sorry about all the numbers, but it is kind of important for us to talk about and let you know. So we operate 6 drop-off stations. You can see the addresses are listed there on the drop-offs that we do have. In 2020, we emptied almost 2,000 8-yard dumpsters of recyclable materials. That's what that 1,900 number means. So, and that equated to about 620 tons of mixed recyclables that came out of those sites. And we also operate a cardboard-only bins at those that come back to our facility. And out of those bins, we pulled in a little over 240 tons of cardboard. An overall goal for the solid waste district is to try to get over 25% of recycling for our commercial and residential rate. So that's the state goal. So in 2019, we're always a year behind, with the information that we bring in. So in 2019, you can see the numbers for the solid waste district here in Clark County. We were at almost 39% of recycling rate, and over 60,000 tons of material that was recycled. So we're very happy with that. We're generally a little bit lower than the year before, but we're generally around that 40% range. So this is kind of a historical perspective of our drop-off locations and kind of what we're bringing in. The first bit is tons of paper that's going in, and we really didn't have very good data for 2020. So we don't operate our own paper-only folks, bins. We rely on third party, and they did not provide us very good data. So we kind of skipped over the tons of paper. I mentioned the tons of commingled recyclables that comes from our drop-off facilities, 620 tons. So we were up a little bit over 2019. Tons of cardboard, we're down a little bit from the previous year at 242 tons, but we did close our drop-off bins for 6 weeks during 2020. So that's reflective of the decrease in cardboard that came through those sites. Non-generation fee income. So the solid waste district is funded through 2 types of revenue. Basically, we have generation fees, which is a fee that is attached to every ton of solid waste that leaves our county and goes to landfill. And then we have non-generation fee, which is basically generated from anybody that comes in and pays for services at the solid waste district. So that's primarily from that specialty recycling on Thursdays. And then also we sell the cardboard that we bring in from our sites as a commodity to make revenue. And we have a little bit of revenue that comes from steel that's dropped off and donated that we take to get recycled. So you can see that we were down a little bit in 2020 as far as the total amount of non-generation fee incomes, but Of course, we were shut down for a good bit of last year. So we're really happy that we got as close as we did in 2019. So this is kind of like a kind of high level look at what 2020 looked like as far as our revenue and expenses. You can see that we brought in a little over $900,000 and spent $800,000 last year with kind of an end of year fund balance a little over $1 million for the district. So, given what happened last year, we feel like we tried to be conservative and we ended up the year a little better than we started out. So we're happy with that. I think that's the last slide. One more slide. So that's outside of our office. You have any questions?
Yes.
Yes.
Have you considered putting a recycle bin on the south end of town?
We have not actually. So no, our site, we have a recycling site at West Main, which, we feel is pretty well used. It's not overused though. So it's not something that's come up as far as, you're the first person that I've had ask me about it.
I would recycle more if I didn't have to take it so far.
Okay.
Thank
you. Sure.
Anything else, please?
I just want to commend Chuck and Bonnie both serving as the commission's representative with Keep Clark County Beautiful and also with the Solid Waste District. They do a great job. Are we going to have the sunflower field back? That was such a hit.
Yeah, it's a plan. So we're going to plan it again.
Great. And the other thing, this year we introduced for the first time recycling of styrofoam. And I know not everything can go in it, but could you take a second to explain how that's working and how it works and what can go in?
Yeah, I'll let Bonnie help out a little bit. But so we do recycle styrofoam now. We started in of 2019 actually. Yeah.
Before Thanksgiving.
Right. So we have a drop off bin at 1620 West Main Street that people can bring styrofoam there and put it in. It's open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And we are looking for what we are going to call packaging styrofoam. So it's white, rigid styrofoam that you would have, generally would come probably packaging electronic, something like that. And what we don't want is food styrofoam. So cups, plates are not items that we can recycle. Carry out. What else do we see come in?
Again, like the flexible sheeting, honestly, or something that is wrapped in plastic. If it is that white styrofoam, but it's got a lot of tape or plastic sheeting around it, we ask people that are bringing that to remove those stickers or the plastic sheeting first, and then the white styrofoam can be recycled. A lot of times we just don't have the time to remove those labels and such ourselves, and it doesn't go through the machine very well that densifies the styrofoam, so it's not going to get recycled.
Yeah. So what we actually do is we're not recycling styrofoam at our location. We have a machine that we put that rigid styrofoam in, and it basically chops it up and melts it down, and that densifies it into a product that then we actually sell it to another company that will take that and use it as raw material to make new product. So if folks put materials in the bin that we can't chop up, the machine's not made for that, then our folks are trying to sort that out, and it definitely takes a lot of time away from actually making the material and chopping it up and densifying it. So and if they sneak it in, it doesn't melt correctly. Causes trouble.
I have a question. I'm the big acronym asking person up here. What is REV-expense stand for?
Oh, that's just revenue minus expense.
Revenue, that's a revenue minus.
Yeah.
Okay, and just for the record, your funding, where does it come from?
So I mentioned there's two sources. Most of our funding comes from generation fees. So we have the county solid waste district has an $8.50 per ton generation fee that gets remitted back to us from the first place that garbage goes to when it heads towards the landfill. So if it's a landfill, the landfill will send us that check. It could be a solid waste transfer facility. A lot of the solid waste from Clark County goes to Montgomery County's transfer station. So that transfer station would remit a check to Clark County Solid Waste District and collect that from the waste hauler. So it's
I was just
included
going to
in
say,
that
so the
cost.
generation fee is generated from the waste haulers.
From it's coming from the residents,
I
but
know,
yes,
but
but
it
it's
comes from
being
the waste
paid from the
haulers.
waste hauler. Yes.
Okay. When you put down here, like in 2018, you gave us the number, but you had a pass-through grant. What does that mean there?
So we can apply for grants for the benefit of from a third-party company, for example. So this pass-through grant was intended for a company that was going to try to have a composting facility here in Springfield. I think it was, what's that on? Linden Avenue. So they were going to do a food composting facility there. They applied for the grant, and they needed to have the solid waste district be the sponsor with Ohio EPA to be able to get that money from Ohio EPA. We would pass that money on to the company that was going to do the project here in Springfield, and we had a contract with them. With the agreement with Ohio EPA. That project never came about. So, but that's when that money came to the county or came through our funds, it looked like revenue. It comes in, it looks like revenue. So I just want to clarify that there was a pass-through grant that was part of that revenue.
Thank you for the information. Appreciate it.
Anything else from the commission? Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time. We really appreciate it.
Keep up the good work.
Commissioners, that concludes our work session agenda. There are no other items.
The city commission meeting is called to order. Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Chilton,
Here.
Dr. Estrop,
Here.
Mr. O'Neill,
Here.
Mr. Rue,
Here.
Mr. Copeland,
Here, please rise for the invocation and pledge of allegiance. Our God, we're grateful for the opportunity to make decisions for the community. Help us to make good decisions this evening that serve all of our citizens. In your name we pray. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Anybody want to approve minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Rue.
Yes.
Mrs. Chilton,
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Dr. Estrop,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland,
Yes. Clerk will proceed with first readings by title only.
authorizing the city manager to enter into amendment number 1 to the cropland lease agreement 2021-2025 with Burner Farms to reduce the amount of tillable farmland by approximately 11.4 acres to enable the city to make needed repairs to prevent flooding, and confirming and approving services provided from January 1, 2021 to the passage of this ordinance. Authorizing the city manager to enter into a development incentive agreement, single-family residential development with Ann E. Sparrow to provide for water services to real property outside the city limits.
Are there any questions or comments from commissioners on first reading? Clerk will proceed with second reading.
To amend ordinance number 9190 passed March 12, 1991, and commonly known as the codified ordinances of the city of Springfield, Ohio, by enacting new chapter 377 titled Electric Scooters, E-Scooters.
Move to adopt.
Second.
And moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission?
I had one more question before we vote on the e-scooters. Do these have a speedometer on them?
Would you go to the microphone, please?
That's the only thing I didn't ask. It says they can't be ridden in anything above a 35-mile-an-hour speed limit place. Do these scooters have a speedometer?
So the some models do, some models don't. The model we would use would. We limit the speed limit. So they do go up to 24 miles an hour, but for safety, we limit them to 15 miles an hour. So it's not just chaos.
So the max speed that we can expect in the city of Springfield would be 16 miles per hour.
Yeah, in Mount Vernon, though, like in some cities where they have like a heavy like shopping district, I even then fenced it down to 10 miles an hour just to keep things moving along. So it's incredibly flexible. Like
And
this city can work, or this street can work one way, the next can work
Sure.
another.
And they do have an actual speedometer that the
Correct.
rider knows what he's going.
And
or she.
with a battery percentage.
Okay.
I also have, when would you determine the geo area that they would work? Can you come back to the mic real quick, please?
More, man.
Sorry. That's the one thing I was going to ask you.
That's not determined by
So
us.
do we tell you this would be the parameters?
Where we go, and then if it's amendable, like we could amend it any minute. Again, for certain things, like let's say you have a city parade, we would block out that area so that scooters wouldn't be riding through, but the general fence is determined by you, and that's what we operate.
Thank you.
Yeah, so commissioners, that would be through the approach that Jason has proposed legislation, the use agreement. We would have individual use agreements with each user that would set what their parameters are.
And I do have a basic question. I know that this, once we approve this, is approved and goes into effect 14 days. But when do we expect to see the scooters actually in the city of Springfield?
And again, we would work with a user, and we have one user that has approached us, and we would have to work through the use agreement with that user, but for the end of summer.
I'm not the user, I am more the franchise, so I would be, as a parent company, I would be like your local operator.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Chilton,
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill,
No.
Dr. Estrop,
Yes.
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland,
Yes.
confirming and approving a development incentive agreement, single-family residential development with the Martin Living Trust via Barbara A. Martin, trustee, to provide for water services to real property outside the city limit.
Move to adopt.
Second.
And moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? From the audience? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Dr. Estrop,
Yes.
Mrs. Chilton,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland,
Yes.
authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with Peterson Construction Company for the primary effluent pumps replacement and electrical upgrades project for an amount not to exceed $6,477,000.
Move to adopt.
Second?
And moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? Mr.
Yes.
Estrop?
I was wondering, Mr. Moore explained to us on first reading why this pump was so expensive, but I wonder, Chris, if you could repeat that again. This is obviously a very expensive and important piece of equipment.
Yes, it is, Commissioner. These are the main pumps that pump all of the wastewater that flows through the plant. As everything comes in, the solids are separated. All the liquids have to be pumped through the liquid treatment process. These handle all of those. So they have definitely hit the end of their useful life.
And it has about a 20-year shelf life.
You can hope.
You can hope.
What has happened is because the way these were originally configured, the pumps have been wearing out every 7 to 10. This will increase the area where the pumps sit and allow them to, it'll cut down on the friction of the flow, and we plan on it to extend the life of the pumps moving forward.
Good. Thank you.
Anyone else? Clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Chilton,
Yes.
Dr. Estrop,
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland,
Yes.
authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with Chemco Systems LP for the Lime Slaker Upgrade Project for an amount not to exceed $647,040.
So
Move to adopt.
second?
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? From the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Mrs. Chilton?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Amending the city's Moda Own program to enable city staff to record the property deed on behalf of the participant and directing the city manager, law director, and finance director to do all things they consider necessary to carry out the Moda Own program.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? From the audience? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Mrs. Chilton?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into amendment number 2 to the subrecipient funding agreement, emergency financial hardship assistance, CDBG 2020, with Neighborhood Housing Partnership of Greater Springfield Incorporated to extend the contract completion date to April 30, 2021, and confirming and approving related expenditures from December 31, 2020 to April 30, 2021.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? The audience? Clerk will call the roll.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mrs. Chilton?
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into amendment number 1 to the subrecipient funding agreement, COVID-19 Financial Hardship Assistance Program, Home Tenant-Based Assistance, CV 2020, with Neighborhood Housing Partnership of Greater Springfield Incorporated to extend the contract completion date to April 30, 2021, and confirming and approving related expenditures from December 31, 2020 to April 30, 2021.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Any comments? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Mrs. Chilton?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Confirming purchases and obtaining of services for the city and providing for payments therefore, and declaring an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? From the audience? Clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Chilton?
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with the Archon Builders for the White Box Retail Space Build-Out Project for an amount not to exceed $364,879 and declaring it an emergency therein.
Adopt.
Second?
Been moved and seconded. Question, comment from the commission?
I was wondering if we might get a little more information on the project.
Yes, commissioners, I'll have Paul Hick, the project here, discuss what's in.
Good evening, Commissioners. This is for the retail spaces that were built with the parking garage. We're moving forward with building it out so we can get some tenants in there and start hopefully getting some other businesses along North Fountain Avenue.
Well, don't leave yet, because my question was, when is it going to be ready? And do we already have businesses that are interested?
So they anticipate 120 days to do the build out. We do have some interest in filling up all 3 spaces. We haven't inked any deals yet, but there's been a lot of interest.
Anyone else? Clerk will call the roll.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Mrs. Chilton?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into a non-residential subsidy grant agreement for fund year 2022 and fund year 2023 community-based corrections programs by and between the city and the state of Ohio, Department of Rehabilitation and Correction, Division of Parole and Community Services, Bureau of Community Sanctions, to accept a grant providing funding up to an amount of $307,584 for fiscal years 2022 and 23 for the operation of a community-based corrections program by the Clark County Municipal Court, authorizing the city manager, finance director, and court administrator of the municipal court to do all things necessary to implement said subsidy grant agreement and to comply with all relevant local, state, and federal legal requirements and declaring it an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions, comments? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mrs. Chilton,
Yes.
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Dr. Estrop,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland,
Yes.
confirming and approving change order number 3 to the contract between the city and Structural Systems Repair Group, LLC, for the water treatment plant concrete repairs and wastewater treatment plant secondary clarifiers and effluent diversion concrete repair to increase the contract in an amount not to exceed $18,825.10 for a total amount not to exceed $3,775,322.17, authorizing the city manager to execute said change order number 3 and declaring an emergency therein.
I'll move.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? From the audience? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mrs. Chilton,
Yes.
Dr. Estrop,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland,
Yes.
authorizing the city manager to apply for and accept, if awarded, a fiscal year 2021 Bulletproof Vest Partnership Award in an amount up to $22,618.75 from the Bureau of Justice Assistance, authorizing the city manager, finance director, law director, and chief of police to perform all acts and execute all documents they consider necessary to fulfill the city's obligations under said grant and to comply with all relevant local, state, and federal legal requirements and declaring an emergency therein.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission?
Yes. What is the life of the bulletproof vests?
As commissioners, I'll ask Police Chief Lee Graff if he can explain.
Yes, good evening, Commissioners. Commissioner, the life on those is 5 years. And what this helps cover is new purchases for new officers, as well as replacement vests. And we kind of tier it over 5-year periods, but we're replacing a certain percentage each time, kind of spread out.
So will this get each of our officers the vest? Thank you.
Else? Okay, that concludes our agenda. I want to say,
I didn't call roll yet. I wanted to make sure
oh
we were
yeah,
ready.
why don't we do that?
You gotta have this vest.
Dr. Estrop,
Yes.
Mrs. Chilton,
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland.
Yes. I was anxious to read what I'm going to read now. Former city commissioner and mayor Robert L. Burton passed away on May 24th, 2021 at the age of 86. Bob was elected city commissioner in 1969, took the office as both commissioner and assistant mayor on January 2nd, 1970, and was elected mayor for 2 years beginning in January 2nd, 1972, making him the second African-American mayor in the city's history. Bob will be remembered for his service to the Ohio National Guard, operating his own accounting firm for many years in Springfield, and as a professor of accounting at Clark State. Bob held a bachelor's degree in accounting, master's degree in public administration, and earned his certified public accountant accreditation. He was very active in many boards and foundations in the community and was a co-founder of the African American Community Fund of the Springfield Foundation. We will miss Bob in Springfield. I personally am grateful for the support he provided to me when I first joined the city commission. Anybody else want to comment on Bob Burton?
I believe he was an accountant for the Internal Revenue for a while as well. And he was a great advisor and mentor to me as well when I ran for city commission. So we will miss him, and our sympathy goes to the family.
In my experience, that he was always very approachable. If you didn't like his answer, so what? But he would give you the answer. And that was very important when you got on this commission.
I was very direct, but he wasn't fighting with you, just telling you what he thought.
That's right.
Anyone else? Any other commissioners want to say anything else?
Mayor, I had the honor of attending a retirement ceremony at the 178th today for retired Colonel Kimberly Norman, and retired Staff Sergeant, Master Sergeant Chris Norman. I was there with the Colonel Miller from the 88th Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, along with a three-star general. It was quite an honor. It was a small group of people, but this couple had a combined 70 years of military service to our country. And Colonel Kim was basically second in command at 88. When the commander would leave the base, she would be in charge. So they live right here in our community, right in Springfield, down on Old Columbus Road. And they are quite a dynamic couple. It was just an honor to be there. We declare today on behalf of the City Commission for each of their retirement dates. So this is the first time that they've had this dual retirement at the 178. So it was a really neat and an honor to be a part of it.
Thanks for representing us.
And just told them how important the base, of course, is to the community. So,
Anyone else? Okay, I have a card from Beth Hutchison. And I just want to remind people we have a 3-minute limit on comments from the audience.
I have my timer tonight. So I want to let you know why I speak here. It's because you are my link to the state officials, who is the link to our government officials, our federal government officials. So that's why I speak to you and try to address you. I want to bring up the SR1, excuse me, the SR1. That really is just the worst idea I've heard from since the CRT. Our Constitution gives the states the right to process their elections for a reason. Ohio really needs to protect that for Ohioans. I believe that this starts at home too. Candidates and constituents, I and many I have spoken with have a serious issue with the way candidates do not represent themselves accurately. For example, Mike DeWine runs on a Republican ticket as a Republican, yet he calls himself a globalist Republican. There are also other, instances of this happening. I'm sure you're aware. Joe Biden ran as a moderate Democrat. He certainly has not presented himself that way since he's been in office. This is misleading, and I believe it is a lie by omission. I believe we need to write a new law where any candidate must exactly state on the voting ticket how they identify themselves politically. We pay for our elected officials to represent us constituents. But once in office, we constituents are becoming invisible. Donald Trump, what establishment does not get about Donald Trump or refuses to accept is that he made us proud to be Americans again and to stand up for our rights. Americans are still the ones voting for everyone who is an elected official. So I do request that you take the things that people say, on our behalf to you. Please express those to our representatives and our senators in Ohio so they can represent us correctly in our federal government. Thank you. Have a good night.
I'm a Democrat, and I do have to say that I'm very clear. No, you're done. That Mike DeWine's a Republican. I'm sorry. You've had your say. You need to be quiet now. I have a right to respond, and I am. I think he's a good governor, by the way, but he is a Republican. And many of his actions are clearly ones that Democrats would not approve of. So he is a very good Republican. And as a Democrat, I recognize that people of both parties can serve their community, whether it be their city, their county, their state, or the United States. So I am grateful to connect to them and to communicate to them what we think is good. Any other comments? No, you're out of,
I
you
would
used your
like
3
you to
minutes, man.
represent the constituents of Springfield City.
No, you don't actually, but that's all right. Run for election if you want to represent.
I might do that.
Yeah, I suspect so. But we have a 3-minute limit. I have to apply it to everyone equally, okay? That's all I'm doing. Anyone else want to speak? Name and address for the record, please.
Michael Shantz, 1339 Vester Avenue, apartment 113. I got 2 notes. One is that crane up there, somebody vandalized it and flattened one of the driver's side tires. And there's, on that sidewalk in front of that, that's all glass when you walk through there.
Do you know what he's talking about?
Where at again, sir?
Right up here before you get to the stoplight on East Main, on the left side, right there where they got that crane parked.
The old Crow Collier site? Is that what you're talking about? The old Crow Collier
Yeah, I
site?
think
No, right there before you get to the stoplight that on East High
Okay.
Street,
Why don't you come up and
right there
talk
by
to
the
us?
Catholic Church.
Why don't you come up and talk to us after the meeting's over? Because I think
Okay.
we're a little okay? Anyone else? Is there a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Or call the roll.
Mrs. Chilton,
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mr. Rue,